Welcome back to the Best Ball Boardroom. Happy Independence Week. Hope everyone had a good 4th of July. We took off for, it's a bank holiday. You didn't see us on Monday, but we are back today, and I've got a great guest on. Virtual world right now, it is great that it doesn't matter where he is. If he's in Oregon, you can't draft there. But today, he is joining us for a Best Ball Mania. Mr. Bankratch, how are we doing?
Good, man. Glad to be here. It's always fun to get a chance to draft on stream because I can't draft in my home location. Got to travel to get into those drafts, but excited to draft today, man.
How have your slow drafts been going? I know we were just chatting. They're mostly wrapped up. I know when you started the fast, you were kind of a little talking about a little phased, a little not feeling the whole getting your feel for the ADP. But after all the slows, after getting some fast, you feel better now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun to draft through them all. Certainly, I talked a little bit about this over on ship chasing and stuff, but I wasn't aware that I could do this until this year. And so I hadn't done any drafts, hadn't used the Underdog app or anything. It's fantastic. It's something that has been great to get familiar with over the last few weeks. But yeah, just wrapped up my first 35. I'm going to be drafting again next week to enter a bunch more, probably more than 35 this time around. And it was fun. It was fun to rip through a good chunk of drafts over the last few weeks.
Nice. And doing the Establish the Edge, going through your projections with Leone, annual tradition. I know people love that content. I personally do. Any kind of surprises that through your discussions with Leone that kind of you've been leaning into, incorporating in drafts? As you answer that, we have jumped into a BBM. I'll put it on the screen now, but anyone that wants to join, come draft.
Yeah, I mean, the pods with Leone are great. Any surprises? Certainly, I mean, for anyone who's listened through them, we're covering all the teams. We're covering all the players, basically. We're going position by position, team by team, division by division. So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot. You could name a division, and I would probably have a handful of surprises I could talk about. But one of the biggest ones from our most recent pods that I've been kind of thinking through and chewing on is the Colts, who I've been mostly not really interested in. But seeing Shane Steichen's history of pace and tempo with the Eagles the last couple of years, and then also going back to 2020, he was the offensive coordinator for the Chargers in Justin Herbert's rookie season, and seeing that they led the NFL in play volume, which you don't typically see from a rookie quarterback-led offense. It just got me a little bit more interested. I know Richardson's a little bit of a project, or at least that's the scouting report on him from most, and that's part of the reason I wasn't that interested in jumping into this offense in year one. Obviously, in addition to the fact that he's going to run a lot, and that can hurt the skill position production in the offense. But if they do play with some tempo and get up tempo and plays, I'm at least a little bit more interested in the Colts. I think Jonathan Taylor looks like a pretty interesting play as well, sort of as the most. Maybe not the immediate name that I would think of when I start thinking about the play volume trends and the fact that can probably help pass volume. But Taylor's the one that I was probably most interested in just generally in this offense, because I think people are a little bit discounting his 2022, forgetting how good he was in 2021. And if this is an offense that runs a lot of plays, I mean, he's a guy that I think can have a really great year. So, there's a lot of stuff that we've covered, me and Leone going through all the pods, but that's one that's been sticking with me.
All right, we'll go back to the Colts in a second. Starting off, 1.2, are you fading Chase in any reason here, or are you just kind of going the chalk starting off?
No, Jefferson and Chase are easy picks for me.
With the JT situation, so I think the downside there is, one, Anthony Richardson did not pass virtually at all, very, very little in college. He's got the profile of someone who's not going to be doing many drop-offs, more likely to kind of just run on his own. Obviously, we expect he'd be stealing touchdowns if there are many touchdowns from JT. Concern there, or is it more of just this is just such a wide range of outcomes that maybe he's actually not that bad? And if the offense as a whole, JT is just a screaming value.
No, those are legit concerns. I think the counter would be that JT has the potential as a runner to have. I mean, he had an 1,800 rushing yard season in 2021, 18 touchdowns. Now he gets a mobile quarterback, which is going to improve the rushing efficiency. Traditionally, the Eagles' run game, Jalen Hurts led the all NFL quarterbacks by a lot in design runs last year. I think they'll use Richardson on a lot of designed runs, which I think will force defenses with his athleticism to respect that more and really, help Jonathan Taylor sort of in between the tackles and the ways that the mobile quarterbacks can impact what defenses have to do and what that opens up for the running backs and why we see the running back efficiency jump. So his rushing can be, I think, really strong. And one of the big things in 2021 that he did a lot of was create a lot of big plays, a lot of explosive plays. They're not necessarily super predictive. We didn't see that last year, though. And he does have like the talent and the profile to rip off a lot of explosive plays. And, in fantasy football, we're looking for outlier seasons. We're looking for, I was just talking about this with a few people earlier today, but when you talk about like explosive run rate for running backs, you look back at guys like Jamal Charles and Chris Johnson. These guys were fantasy superstars on an ability to hit on a lot of explosive plays in an individual season, which is a lot of what Taylor did in 2021. It doesn't feel super predictive in any given, like in a projection or in any given season, and yet the fact that he has that potential and has a workhorse profile that can also hit on a lot of big plays, it's very Derrick Henry-esque. I think is definitely something to value. And then when you have the mobile quarterback in addition, and the second part of this projection for the Colts that I thought was really interesting was just recognizing we have a very capable backup in Gardner Minshew, one of the most capable backups in the league. He was with the Eagles the last couple of years with Steichen, presumably knows the offense. If for some reason Richardson isn't capable of managing the offense, if the offense really stinks, if he's not ready, they'll probably go to Minshew, which I think would be one of the biggest flips from a starter to a backup in terms of how you would project the offense. Suddenly, you're not talking about a lot of mobility at quarterback. You're talking about a guy who gets the ball out a lot and has had a really high running back target rate. And I think there are scenarios for Taylor where if Minshew's playing some games, he suddenly is catching above average numbers of passes. His receiving role is suddenly really strong. So I think there's he could run for 2,000 yards with Richardson and, the backup scenario where he has more of a traditional bell cow with receiving profile, but both are scenarios where I think he's a good bounce back candidate after a tough 22, just on talent basically alone.
So with the Richardson situation then, because he's dropped down to ADP of 100. I've been doing the weekly winners a bunch where I think he's like low 90s and such. I get that. Just all QBs going a little earlier and such. What's the overall take there from a best ball strategy of, I don't know, because I think that we're going to get news. I think he starts week 1. Obviously, we don't know. Maybe I'm putting it at like 60-40 or something. But once we start getting that news, I think his ADP just completely starts moving back to that 80 range when he's starting week 1. There's risk he doesn't, obviously. How are you kind of treating that from a best ball angle?
Yeah, that's a good question. And we're going to be on the clock here in a second. That's a tricky one for me. But what do you like to do? I find myself going running back a lot at this turn, and especially now that Devonta Smith and Higgins both go off. I think this is a really nice start when you get Jefferson or Chase to get 2 anchors in this range. What do you think about that?
I agree. Like if Higgins was here, you get that difficult decision. I'd probably looking at the room and not many badges, but like thinking, could I have had Burrow actually fall to us in the 4th? Because I'm never taking him in the 3rd there. But in this situation, yeah. So we'll grab Pollard with the kind of ADP, see which running back falls to us, and I'm content with it. Looking at the draft as well, you've got Wiggity going with the Hurts one here. Like this is where I do think it is a little more difficult decision than grabbing another running back of should we grab a QB? Like Hurts, you can still pair with Goddard. Josh Allen, you can always stack later on. Or do we go with a Henry or Jacobs? I'm probably leaning the running back as well here. Henry, Jacobs preference, or do you want to go with the elite QB?
I would probably lean Jacobs. I like both Stevenson and Hall who go at the turn. I would probably move away. I haven't been as in on the elite QBs and unstacked. I think is a tough trigger for me to pull, but I get your your take is essentially to box out Wiggity. Is that sort of the idea?
No. More of just starting two running backs in the first three kind of hurts your ability to kind of catch some running back falling value later on. And
Sure.
guys like Hurts, I mean, Hurts can give you a weekly winning upside even if you don't have Brown or Devonta Smith. You could still grab Goddard later on. Well, we'd have picked 71. Goddard's going 75, so you're most likely able to grab him. Same with Gabe Davis. His ADP is at what, like 72? 77 right now, so you could be able to still get him at that 74. It's like you're not really saying, hey, you're not going to be able to get stacks if you grab either of those two. It's whether or not you're okay with saying like, okay, I've got my running backs and how much are you going to invest going forward in them?
Sure.
I mean, I'm sorry. I'm the one that's talking to a ship chasing bro about why we shouldn't draft two running backs in the first 3 rounds. This is banana land. Makes sense. And then we've got Banana Man on here too. So
yeah, man, I when I make this move of going running back here, I hear your point on the falling running back value. I'm also, a big proponent of the running back dead zone. It's been interesting to see those shifting trends, certainly, but I'm more or less make up my mind at this point that I'm not taking another running back till, round 9 or 10. And it's not, to me, a value question as much as I like to build through the potentially elite running backs more than I like to build through the ones that are, being pushed down into that dead zone type range, even though it is a little bit different in 2023, certainly. So I'm comfortable making these plays, even if it feels restricting, because I'm comfortable going several rounds and knowing it in advance that I'm not going to take a running back. Like I'm going to go these next several rounds and just not worry about it.
And these are a little different drafts than the ones that you're used to in your, over on ship chasing, because look, wide receivers, not as going crazy as you're used to.
Sure.
Because I'm sure you're, in a situation where if you go 2 running backs here, you're kind of just saying, I'm really behind the 8 ball on wide receivers. Actually, I don't hate when you start with the elite wide receiver. Like this is actually, I think, a decent way to combat wide receiver runs, because there is a substantial drop off after from T. Higgins down to DK. I even think there's a strong drop off from Jalen Waddle to these guys. Maybe you can include Olave there, but then the Devonta Smith and T. Higgins aspect. And how much different is Josh Jacobs than Bijan Robinson this year? I don't know. I think Bijan probably outscores Josh Jacobs 55% of the time. I think it's extremely close.
Yeah, I mean, it might even be Jacobs outscores him 55% of the time, but the case with Robinson is that he's just immediately so good that he breaks fantasy football, which is, I mean, from a profile perspective, I want some exposure to him because of that, but I get your point. I mean, at 111, he's not much different from a pure projection standpoint and volume standpoint. I mean, he's got a really capable backup in Tyler Algier, and then a really capable number 3, probably the most capable number 3 in the NFL, and Cordero Patterson. In terms of that guy's probably going to still get some carries, and I've been touting him a little bit as a last round pick because I also think he's going to play some wide receiver, and they'll be free to split him out more like they did more in 2021 than they did in 2022 because they don't really have a wide receiver 2 either. So that's and it will be interesting to see how they utilize him, but. If he got, if Cordero's healthy and gets, 5 or 6 carries a game, even Algier's probably going to get some work. It can start to really cut into Robinson, even as a run heavy team. But yeah, I mean, he could just be very similar to what I was describing with Taylor, a sort of bet on talent where he starts to hit on a lot of big plays. We saw it with Breece Hall last year. I mean, projection wise, the pure volume projections were holding down Breece Hall. But I mean, when he got hurt, he looked like he was going to be a superstar fantasy player because of his ability to just hit on, monster touchdown runs. Yeah.
Burrow goes right there. Fresh cut grabbing for the T. Higgins. It makes sense. I'm not even sure how much I really wanted Burrow there, but it's okay. We probably need wide receivers. Terry, Christian Kirk. These are ETR rankings, but there's definitely.
I like Terry.
There. Okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I like Terry here. And then I guess probably the bigger discussion would be after the turn. I would probably be all the way to Godwin at that point. He's a little bit he's up there, and you guys' ETR ranks a little bit lower in ADP value. But certainly open to. I mean, we're in a room here where a lot of the available options are not receivers.
Right. And I mean, yeah, I think we can rule out running back here. It would have been interesting. I don't think I would have done it, but I do want to bring up Travis Etienne because we'll talk about it after this pick, just because you and Leone specifically talked about him. And he was actually a little more bullish on him in your discussion than I was expecting. Christian Kirk and Justin Fields goes. Do you consider Hawkinson here? Or is it like we've already taken those two?
I consider it, but because we went 2 running backs, I kind of want to get another receiver at this stage, personally. I have taken Hawkinson with Jefferson, right at this turn. Because we're a Chase start and not a Jefferson start, I'm less inclined to go Hawkinson. But I do really like Hawkinson in a vacuum at Bryce. I mean, he was really good with the Vikings after coming over, sort of felt like the perfect fit. I don't see a lot of concerns for him this year. I mean, adding Addison, I think, is sort of a positive, but maybe it's a little bit of a concern from a target volume standpoint. But I think Addison just adds more. It is more of a reason why defenses will leave a lot of the underneath stuff available, which is sort of the way that I was explaining the Hawkinson stuff when I was writing about it, during the weeks last year. You're talking about Jefferson drawing so much attention, and then this tight end being, less explosive and more available to leave open in one-on-one situations. Hawkinson's winning on those. He's earning a lot of targets. And then you have the defense still being really poor. And, I mean, just the likelihood of a lot of plays and a lot of pass volume in the way that the Vikings set up this year. We talked about that on Leone and I on our show, where you're looking at a good pace and plenty of pass volume, plenty of a decent pass rate. Obviously, they let Dalvin Cook go. They're going forward with Alexander Mattison, but that looks like an offense that can definitely throw plenty. I think Hawkinson's a really nice play in that range. He's still falling.
Have the dome, and it's historically been just such a highly concentrated passing offense. Not only is he dropping back, I don't know, what is it, 600 times a year, but you're pretty confident in where those targets go. So there's then contingency upside that if one of those Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson goes down, I guess like we did see what KJ Osborne had that one huge game last year where like maybe you get some of these peripheral ones that'll have the big games, but I think it kind of just even becomes a more narrow target tree.
I agree. Yeah. And Hawkinson, I mean, was a huge part of that from day one in Minnesota. If you do go back and look at his numbers, keep in mind he played fewer than half the snaps in week 18 and then had a big playoff game as well. So you have this, I think it's 10-game sample. It's even more impressive if you control for him not really playing the full game in week 18 and look at his 11th game that he played with the team, which was the playoff game against the Giants. He had 10 catch, 129-yard game or something like that.
All right, let's give a quick shout out to the chat. Look at that. Woman's coin. Man's coin did a little, I guess, a little side hustle for the woman's coin there. We got Ziegler with a nice GM. Freshka with a nice draft from the 3 spot here. Getting that Cincy going. That Joe shouting out Ben and stuff. And T 49 overall last year, going around 2, just not going to pay off. Interesting. I don't know. I think T is still a very, very great, very strong value this year and has some contingency upside. Wiggity's draft here is strong. AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, getting the full Eagles. ETN is a falling value. I'm not huge in the Ayuk, but I think it's fine. But not
another ADP value probably on Ayuk. I think he's going 50. He gets him at 52.
Yeah.
I also like this 0 RB start in the guy who's on the clock here now, GDE. Diggs, Waddle, Debo, DJ Moore, and he goes Hawkinson. I mean, I'm always game to go 0 RB.
Yeah, I don't love the DJ Moore here with Fields.
Yeah, early for me too.
You weren't getting Fields at 56, and I think then that's a little early there. But from a structure-wise, and keeps it going with a Jordan Addison here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
On the Higgins point, he missed 1 game last year. He had 2 others where he essentially didn't play. There was that one that it crushed everybody who played him in DFS where he played the first snap and didn't play it. He played 1 snap. And then there was another game where he played 10 snaps. Oh, and another one where he only played 26% of the snaps. So yeah, basically 3 games where he, was active but didn't really play. If you look at his per game averages and stuff. Anyway, that argument that he was number 49 overall player last year is, there's context there for sure.
Yeah. All right, we Kyle Pitts is up here, and we still got some wide receivers that I like. Are we allowed to go with another detour to get Kyle Pitts, or do we go with more wide receivers?
I'm always comfortable taking Pitts in the sixth. I just think, I guess I don't know why it's different than Hawkinson last round, but we now have 3 receivers and Pitts this late. I just feel like he's a cheat code in the 6th round. It's silly. We're looking for ceiling in fantasy football. I understand that he let us all down last year. I had a ton of him. It was rough, but like you're looking for ceiling. He has this profile of a wide receiver that we get tight end points for. He was out earning London when they were on the field together. It's just silly where he's going.
I'm concerned.
But I do like this receiver range.
Are going to be here.
What's that?
I'm concerned with what our QBs are going to be here. But let's grab. I don't know. Do we go with Cook so we can maybe go Dak? Do we just grab Gabe as the best?
What about Pickens and we can look at Pickett?
Okay.
I think that's a good call and starting to think through that. I mean, I'm comfortable taking Sam Howell really late as well. So I have some Howell teams with. I sometimes do 3 QB builds with these really late ones, but we got Ritter available to us too. We're fine. We got all the late quarterbacks are available to us.
That's the problem. Is normally I'm like, okay, so give me Daniel Jones and then give me Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett or something. Like I want someone who at least provide me with some weekly upside. I'm trying to think like what there's always the rookie QBs. If we would have gone a Christian Kirk early on, Trevor Lawrence would have been a good one in that past, but then we couldn't have gone Kyle Pitts because we really need the wide receivers. It's going to be an interesting 3 QB team.
It sounds like you're more concerned about building in QB upside than I am. I guess with the prices where they are, my perspective is you have to pay a really strong opportunity cost. I know that there's been a lot of good evidence that's shown that the elite QB has been really good the last couple of years. Some of them have missed as well, and there's a lot of opportunity costs associated with these prices that we're talking about this year. And then especially when you start to get into this range, like you're saying, the QBs that go in 8, 9, 10, 11 feel like actually some of the worst values. They go there because all the other QBs have already gone earlier, and they're probably guys that should be going to 12, 13, 14. When we turn over the cards at the end of the year, I think it's going to be pretty viable to have played some really late round quarterback, getting back to some of the tenets of how, early late round quarterback was when quarterback ADP was really high. It's not that you're going to be able to replace the elite quarterback production every week. It's that you're going to be able to get your points elsewhere. And there's at least a floor with late round quarterbacks. They have presuming that they're going to play. Some of the guys we're talking about might not, like Sam Howell might be a little bit of games played risk, but if they're out there, they're
starting compared to who else you're drafting at those points.
Right. Yeah. They're going to play. Quarterbacks get a certain floor of points. It's not dissimilar in my mind to zero RB, where I don't think zero RB has ever been arguing that you can replicate an elite running back season, but there will be some early running backs that are going to miss. There's only going to be a couple elite running back seasons. Last year, there was only 3 elite QB seasons. Some of these other guys that are going up there, like Fields, 1,100 rushing yards last year, didn't differentiate. He was closer to QB, 18. He was in that massive QBs. He was QB 6, I think it was, but closer to QB 18 than he was to the top 3 quarterbacks. There was 3 that differentiated: Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen, and Burrow was sort of a 4th. He was kind of in that gap between the differentiators at QB. But you can have a season where only 1 or 2 differentiates, again, like the elite running back some seasons. And then the question is, can your late round build replicate enough of that you can win at the other positions? And that's the idea of zero RB, that you can build this sort of Frankenstein running back room late that replicates not the elite running back seasons, but maybe the RB5 type range of scoring. That's the idea, I think, with the late round quarterback in this frothy of a quarterback ADP environment. I do think it's replicable in a zero RB kind of way, as long as you're hitting elsewhere. If our anchor RB builds and Pitts is a differentiator at tight end, and our receivers are able to actually be differentiators, although we haven't put a ton of capital into receiver either. I've put plenty, but for me, this is on the lighter side, 4 through 7.
Yeah. Chase helps
Anyway,
a little.
I do still think that the math can add up to even without elite quarterback production, you can still score enough points from your roster.
Yeah. No, I hear you all there. I think my only push is that I grab QB at this point because what the heck else do I want to be grabbing at this point?
Yeah, this is a tough spot. I don't like the receivers, and I'd want to be taking a receiver, so I'd be leaning like James Cook personally, but that's structurally not a great.
I mean, it's
great
not
lean.
horrible.
What do you like here? I'm comfortable with whatever you like here.
I really don't love anything, but I'd probably be taking this one on the next one and just give us a little more time. But let's grab Freiermuth. It gives us a 2 tight end build. It'll give us
like that.
It'll give us Pickett as well for the Pittsburgh, and now we get a little more time to think through this.
I really like that 2 tight end build. I think Freiermuth's undervalued. We overpaid by ADP, but I do think he should be going about where we took him, frankly. So that's a really nice 2 tight end build in my book.
And I think we overpaid by a half a round, but also we were not getting him later on anyways. So I don't care. Give me the build. Yeah. And again, there's no differentiation with these other, it's ugly. You could go Boyd and make a bet on Higgins, like getting hurt or not, something happening there, and you're getting the 2 Cincy.
Yeah, I don't really love Boyd when we have Chase, but it could be a bet against Higgins.
Maybe we just go James Cook.
I think I would probably just go Cook, but I don't love it.
Yeah.
It's a tough spot. I hear that.
What about Gibson because we're grabbing Howell?
Sure.
Okay. I can at least talk myself into that a little more.
Gibson's going to probably be their primary receiving back. I think it makes sense.
I think we're grabbing Sam Howell. I like the different bye week here because we invested a lot here. I don't think this is going to be a 4 running back build, but now I
didn't like Cook's. I didn't like Cook's bye week match with Jacobs either. I noticed that. That's a good call. I like that. I would have been okay with Sutton, who went 1 pick before us in the 8th, but that's where I think the wide receiver window really closes. I can talk myself into Sutton a little bit. Jamison Williams goes there on the turn. He might have been an interesting play, but I mean, it's a tough one when he's suspended for 6 weeks. Yeah. But at least with some upside later in the season. But I'm
on the drop off at Brandon Cooks.
It's all a transition there. I still like Bateman and Flowers. I can take Elijah Moore. I can take Sutton. This is the transition range for sure. I don't love any of them.
There's just, you get to a place in that, from the dead zone of wide receivers where they all have substantial question marks and they don't have the upside of the tier above them.
That's the way I always talk about the wide receiver window closing. It's the upside profile. I still think Bateman and Flowers, that's why I still mention them. I think they still have upside cases, right? I think Sutton maybe still has an upside case, but yeah, I'm right with you. It's the upside case. Like Tyler Boyd, to me, we try to talk through his upside case. I don't see the upside. I've always been a Boyd fan, but at this stage and the way his stats have progressed the last couple of years, I don't see the upside case. It's a reach at that ADP.
I agree with that. And I think the ADP is what it is because that's where the Chase and Higgins and likely the Burrow teams are. So those guys who only get 1 Cincy, either Chase or Higgins, I have Burrow. I need a second pairing mate. I'm going to grab Tyler Boyd. He's just not that much different than the other wide receivers in this one.
For sure. This is an interesting comment. We could have went Charbonnet for the bring back because we aren't going to be able to get a Seattle bring back on Pittsburgh. I think you really want to get one of those big 3 receivers probably or Kenneth Walker, but Charbonnet would have been a possibility.
I
like the Gibson play. I think that puts us in a good spot.
I will say I am moving slower, like more and more away from Charbs and more towards Kenneth Walker.
That's cool.
It just it's one of those things. And actually, Bime 4 was with Karain on one of their recent pods, and Bime 4 was talking about just the more kind of football aspects of these veteran running back. These veteran running backs just have such a leg up, and Kenneth Walker is a really good player. Sharp adds a lot of fun dynamic elements that we're excited about because of what we've seen in college, but also there's so many check boxes he needs to check just to get on the field that we already know Kenneth Walker has successfully checked. And yes, I have confidence that Charbonnet is a better pass catcher than Kenneth Walker, but there's still so many more elements that he needs to kind of, successfully pass in the eyes of the coach. That the risk that I don't know, I just don't think that risk is enough baked in, and probably why I'm leaning.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
And just from a general skill perspective, he might not be very good, frankly. He had to transfer in college. His profile is not that elite. It looked really good once he got into a Chip Kelly offense. There's been a lot of Chip Kelly running backs who looked great in college. LaMichael James, Royce Freeman, who didn't look great in the NFL. So, I mean, there's some concern there as well. The guy that I would have went to at receiver, if I was just sort of like, we didn't really have time to talk through it, but if I was just sort of drafting alone, as in my head, was Sky Moore. He's an interesting name, certainly. I was the reason I didn't bring him up is I was kind of hoping maybe there was a shot he'd come all the way back to us.
Yeah.
He would have been a bring back or a mini correlation
Cincy.
with Cincy.
Yeah,
113. I knew his ADP was not at 98. It was quite a bit behind 98. It would have been a reach, but he is a guy that's after that wide receiver window where I do still think there's a pretty decent upside case. If the biggest thing that sold me on him is that Andy Reid rookie receivers throughout Andy Reid's tenure have tended to not do much at all. And that's, if you want to give him a pass for his bad rookie season, that's one way you can give him a pass. And there's been a lot of hype for him going into year 2.
What about this wide receiver range? Allen Lazard, probably the one that jumps out the most. Otherwise, we still have some running backs. You could theoretically go with a Lazard and Rodgers if we wanted.
Yeah, gross, but I mean, sometimes you got to make a gross pick. I don't like taking Lazard, but I think in this build, I want to be taking another receiver, and it can make sense. And the ability to stack him with Rodgers definitely stands out as probably the right move at this turn, even though that's one of the things I've had to learn more in best ball than manage. Sometimes you just have to take your medicine and take picks you don't want to take. I'm a little bit more idealistic with my player takes in managed. I want to just target all sorts of upside, but you also know that when you miss, you can churn waivers, and you can't do that here. Sometimes you got to, and you're building a bigger portfolio, and sometimes you got to just take your medicine. I think Rodgers is a good pick here as well.
Yeah.
If I'm playing the Jets, though, I mean, I'm just a really big Garrett Wilson stan. I want to be playing Rodgers Wilson, and I've taken Rodgers with Wilson, and I've taken a lot of Wilson, and that's a big reason why I'm not as high on Lazard. But my thought is, if Lazard has to have a big year for the Jets, that Rodgers probably isn't having a huge season either, or however you want to frame that. But for him to come in and have a big year with the Jets right away, I think is pretty contingent on Wilson, and I want those to be sort of stacked together. And then I like to add Conklin at the end. I think he's a viable, really late tight end option as well. Lazard is, again, in this range where we feel like the upside profiles have sort of dropped off, and so you're not probably wanting to go wide receiver in this range. But, sometimes you have to take your medicine, like we're saying.
And so we're not going to go Conklin because we got our 2 tight ends. We could go Mecole Hardman. We could go Corey Davis. I actually really like the Corey Davis one from a last round pick as well. So there are some kind of late jet stacks that I don't hate. I agree with you. From a Rodgers having his top 5 QB season, you need Garrett Wilson to have that huge, and that's fine. But for one individual week, if we're going to have a 3 QB build,
yep,
I'm fine with Rodgers and Garrett Wilson having huge seasons. We still advance the playoffs. Once you get there, all we need is that 1 week that maybe it's the Rodgers-Lazard connection. The other is...
And it's so touchdown dependent in half PPR. I mean, you basically need Lazard to run hot with 4 TDs in 3 weeks, and it's very, very doable. He's had strong TD rates throughout his time with Rodgers.
Right. And I mean, I start getting really uncomfortable if I don't have a QB through 11 rounds, because even though we've got these great stack options for the Kenny Pickett with his Freiermuth and Pickens, the Sam Howell with the Gibson, and the who was it? We went Terry. But who would there's no third QB that I feel comfortable or great with the team that we're building here.
Are you not in on Ritter? Yeah, Ritter.
I'm okay with Ritter now. With the Rodgers one, I don't think I'm comfortable with Pickett, Howell, Ritter. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I have some teams that have Pickett, Howell, Ritter. It might be cutting it a little thin.
It's tough. I think you're really counting on Howell. That's a Howell team. You're really just hoping that Howell starts the entire year. Maybe you had DeHaan Dotson to go with it as well or something. And a bet's a bet. I get it. Yeah.
It's all the whole second year quarterback class, really, right? Like those are the guys. Matt Corral's gone. Malik Willis isn't starting. It's taking the other three guys and saying one of them is going to take, or multiple of them are going to take big steps forward in year two. It was one of the worst quarterback classes of all time, so it's probably not the right bet to make. But in the current landscape, I do like all those second-year guys.
Okay, let's do a quick recap on the team so we can think through what we need going forward. We have just Rodgers. We have Pollard, Jacobs, and Gibson. I'm thinking we'll probably have those two QBs. Obviously, we're looking at Pickett and Howell. Probably two more running backs. So that gives us 3, 5, and then that'd be 8, 2. So 3 more wide receivers here. From stack options, we can start throwing some in there as well. We mentioned the Corey Davis and the Mecole at the end. From a Pittsburgh, you really don't have anything. Yeah, no. Worth probably including Jaylen Warren in that conversation.
Yeah. Allen Robinson, gross. Jaylen Warren goes. This is the one I like, Curtis Samuel. I think he plays a lot. They don't really have a viable wide receiver 4. Last year, the guy they used was Cam Sims. He's no longer on the roster. They still have a guy, Dax Milne. De'Ami Brown is there, but he has not gotten onto the field much or been very productive when he has. I think you're probably looking at a pretty strong concentration for the main 3 receivers this year in Washington, but between McLaurin, Dotson, and Curtis Samuel. Ron Rivera very openly sort of coaching for his job. That's why some people have been concerned about Howell even starting a whole lot. But I do think Howell gives him more upside, and I like the bet on him to basically win the job in camp. But I think when you are in that situation where you're kind of coaching for your job, you're more likely to look, these are my veterans. These are my guys. I'm playing them. We talked about like the Vikings concentration of routes. We know that's going to be there. I think Washington is the team that's low key going to be there. And Curtis Samuel is the guy that's going to benefit from an ADP perspective from just running a ton of routes. It's very similar to Jacksonville was like this last year. Zay Jones was the late receiver that had really strong win rates. And a big part of it for him was just really consolidating routes. And so, yeah, getting that additional Washington stack through Samuel seems pretty interesting to me.
I like it. Where we go, Dan. No, actually, I'm big on Jaylen Warren. I've actually got a decent amount of him. For me, it was just not wanting to invest another running back at this point because got 2 really strong running backs early on. So I was like, I don't really want to devote too much immediate running back capital. Was thinking like kind of 2 more late running backs, but that was just the thought there.
He became my highest drafted running back through those first 35 drafts we were talking about earlier, Jaylen Warren. And not really intentionally, but I like him in this spot. But I agree with you in this build.
You have 0 probably of. Or
I don't think I have any
Najee. Exactly, same thing. All right, we got some kind of random wide receiver options if we want. We can take a look at the running back. It's pretty ugly right now.
Yeah, I don't mind kicking the running back can. We've already put a lot of eggs in those first 3.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so we're going to go 3 more wide receivers. We've got kind of probably Curtis Samuel, one more jet maybe. This leaves us with kind of a one-off in this spot.
I do like this ranking of Chark ahead of.
Here we go. What about Rashee
Rice?
Yeah.
He's fallen a lot. And I just talked about the Andy Reid rookies haven't hit, but I think at this price, you can certainly make the case for that as a bring back. I like that a lot. I've taken him above ADP in some of the Bengals ones where I need to bring back, but yeah, I like him more than MV. MVS has some splash week potential for sure as a vertical threat, but never really consolidated stuff. Rice had a season last year where he caught 100 plus balls and has the potential to step into a high volume role potentially.
Should we grab one of the running backs here? We've got an ADP, or it's like, do you want to grab Kenny Pickett 2 rounds early? I don't think so.
Where's Samuel at?
DPJ for the bring back to the Jets.
Sure.
And then
I like him. He's solid.
I think, I'm good with that.
That's a good bring back.
Him or Jerome Ford as a bring
and then
back
the next turn, we're hoping to get both Pickett and Samuel essentially.
Exactly.
Okay. Yep. If we can pull that off. I didn't know from an ADP perspective if we would be able to wait on both those. It fits nicely. Great.
Pickett's 167, Samuel's 173 or 170. So
great.
From a sniping wise, who would want Pittsburgh? Deontay? Where's the Deontay owner?
He's way back at 11. Pick
59.
11 up there.
Alex Berg went Geno.
He took Warren too. He took Warren last round, and he has JSN as a bring back. We're gonna get sniped.
And he's definitely watching here. Alex, put in the chat. Just let us know. Put us out of your bench.
We're getting sniped. It's happening.
Alex Berg, let's find a better QB for your team right now. Let's take a look. All right, what should you be doing? Jimmy G. He's definitely going Jimmy G. We love Jimmy G. Stacking that with Devontae. Jordan Love for the Romeo. Yeah. Jordan Love, Jimmy G is a lot better build. Oh, Christian Watson. No, he is going
Christian Watson.
He is going Jordan Love. Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs. Definitely going to be going Jordan Love here.
As long as I get Love, you get Pickett. Look at that.
Don't do it, Word Grab. Do not take a naked Jordan Love. You do not have any Packers. He goes MVS.
MVS goes.
Alex,
that's
do not
hilarious.
Get greedy and give it a chance.
Yeah, I thought he was going to run it around the corner.
And then Gambit ends up just going, yeah.
Goes Love, and then he has to take Pickett on the comeback. That'd be hilarious.
All right. Now we're just got to see if anybody else takes the name.
So one of the things, like Stepfather's Fans Football here asks, why would you pass on 12, 13 on running backs if you plan on some of these receivers later? I think you still need to be targeting upside wide receivers first of all. I think we get way too complacent on just throwing on stack receivers. This roster that we've built doesn't have enough wide receiver upside. We took Alan Lazard as our, wide receiver 5? That's a concern.
Yeah,
I think there are too many people that think when they're hitting the elite quarterback, they're hitting an elite tight end, they're hitting an early running back, their receivers are fine. And you're going to find during the season that team's not going to win because you don't have enough receiver firepower. It's that's what's going to happen. It looks good on paper. We talk about this often. Twitter is going to like the teams where you get the elite onesie and you get early running backs, and they're not going to care as much about how strong your wide receiver 4 is or wide receiver 5. But it's been shown in a lot of different ways. You need wide receiver firepower to fill all 3 wide receiver spots and help out at the flex. So we're still trying to do that. I think DPJ and Rashee Rice are profiles that are interesting once you get into those ranges and they correlated. And then the second side of this is we're at a point now with running back. Once you get past the Jaylen Warren range, I think it really flattens out. Those names you were looking at were pretty flat. And I really like some of the actual, literally the last round running backs, I think are still pretty viable. And I think could arguably go in round 13. Like the Cordero Patterson move I was talking about, but both the Minnesota backups were going there. Ty Chandler has since risen quite a bit, but I still think DeWayne McBride is an interesting play very, very late. You have the Bengals backups go really late, even Travion Williams is a possibility back there. Pierre Strong is a possibility, I think, now that James Robinson has fallen off. CEH is a guy I'd be willing to take. I haven't taken a ton of him, but I'd be willing to throw in. Don't love the play, could be inactive on game day. Also think his ADP should not be over 200 as the potential candidate. He scored 6 touchdowns in the first 7 or 8 weeks last year. If Pacheco goes down, he plays. I don't think they're going to just roll with McKinnon and rookie Deneric Prince. I think that's an overreaction on the fantasy community's standpoint. So there's I think a lot of ways to play running back really late. And so that's why, for me, it made sense to continue to prioritize wide receiver there. With the 3 that we already had in our running back build, I think our running backs are still going to look solid. We're still going to be pretty okay. You're not going to love them, but we took 2 in the first 3 rounds. I mean, we have some guys that we made our bets on.
We're counting those guys being good, especially playoffs. Yeah. For me, actually, the big drop-off is after Jaylen Warren. I think Tank Bigsby is a substantial drop from Jaylen Warren, and that's where the running backs are pretty almost flat to the end of the drafts. Iron Griffin, what are you doing, Iron Griffin? You have Fields. I don't know. We got to take a chance. We got to grab Kenny Pickett here and just hope.
I'm with you. I want to lock up Pickett.
Yeah, agreed. And just hope that Curtis Samuel falls to us. If he was to take Curtis Samuel, there's a consolation prize that at least Sam Howell is more likely to fall to us still because the Curtis Samuel owner is at least kind of boxed off from us. But yeah, when we were looking at those, I don't know, I'm bullish on Tank Bigsby. I do think they don't want to have Travis Etienne having that. I think you said, one of you two mentioned, your Leone, that you had about 100 rushes for Tank Bigsby. which I think like is completely fair. But again, it's a rookie that we haven't seen on the field, still needs to pass the check boxes to actually earn that role. Compare that to Jaylen Warren, who we've actually already seen may be the better back in Pittsburgh.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly where I see a little bit of a drop off as well. I mean, there's a couple. Was Kendra Miller after that? I think Kendra Miller is interesting. If Kamara gets, I think he was right after Bigsby, but it's right in this range. I like Algier. I talked about also liking Patterson. He's a tough one for me. I do take some of him, but not. I'm mostly playing that back to, I guess, through Bijan and Patterson. It's weird that there's 3 draftable backs, but that's Arthur Smith.
I'm not against those running backs, but I think if we look at who's here, you've got Jaylen Warren, who's in there's 2 running backs there. That's pretty clear, and he has a chance at actually earning that top job. Jerick McKinnon, we've seen him actually have 25-point games last year. Like, it's not unreasonable to believe he does it again. Then you've got rookie. We don't know what his role actually is behind a stud. Kendra Miller, again, rookie, also 3-headed backfield. Tyler Algier, now maybe a 3-headed backfield again. Roshan Johnson, 3-headed backfield and rookie.
Yeah.
It's just, yes, there are upside plays for, I believe, Kendra Miller, and I think he probably has like substantial upside if it works out. But for what he's got a path, the path that he needs to get there, in my opinion, is such a lower likelihood than what it is for Jaylen Warren or Jerick McKinnon. Yeah.
That's a great way to put it.
Put out a tweet a long time ago because we always talk about upside, and I think it was the conversations around like the DJ Moore, Justin Fields aspects, and like if they hit, their upside is so high. And Dalton Kincaid was also the big one too. But it's like, yeah, if those hit, this world that we're envisioning is so amazing for that player. But the likelihood of it actually happening, the likelihood of rookie Dalton Kincaid actually having whatever turning into a slot wide receiver, having them Isaiah McKenzie, Cole Beasley role, like it's just really, really slim. And I don't think we're good enough in on the spot decisions, accounting for likelihood versus that upside scenario.
For sure. Yeah, I actually really like the way this has worked out, considering for me, it's light at wide receiver still, because I do like the way we've addressed that outside the wide receiver window. I do think Rice and DPJ correlated, and then Samuel, knowing that we're going to be stacking Washington. We've now taken 3 pieces from Washington. It's very much a Howell team. I think our receiving core has a chance to play up, even though we've played it heavily outside the wide receiver window. I mean, generally in a draft, I'm taking the majority of my wide receivers before that wide receiver window closes, or more than half. In this one, I think we have exactly half. We have 4 early and 4 late.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tough, and that's where the 2 running backs or the Kyle Pitts. Once you took the third one, and that's where I don't love going 2 running backs, but I do think it was the right play here. But then Kyle Pitts, maybe we shouldn't have drafted Kyle Pitts, but it's like, if you're not willing to draft Kyle Pitts there, you're not going to have much Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Right.
No, I think tight end can be a differentiator for us. This is a good team. I like this team.
Is there any chance that you would be like, you know what? Maybe we should just do 4 running back here, and we need that extra correlated wide receiver spot?
That's interesting. I don't usually go there, but it's maybe a lack of
the data's
upside
not
consideration.
Good on 4 running backs lately.
What's that?
The data on 4 running backs has not been good since BBM1.
Yeah, that's sort of the concern, and especially because we only took 2 early, then took 1 sort of in.
And now we're really late.
And now we're really late for our 4th. Yeah. It's tough to settle at 4. I like just locking up Howell here, and then I'm kind of thinking.
I like these running backs too, but
I like these running backs a lot. I mean, I'm not a Leonard Fournette guy, but Leonard Fournette, you can add. Someone mentioned that there's a good chance of the late running backs. I haven't taken a ton of him, but I mean, but Ty or him, I'm very comfortable with here. But yeah, there's a good chance of the late running backs not having being dead. Agreed, but that's all. I think most of that research is based on, and I mean. My take is this year, some of these guys are going to raise MVP by the end of August.
I think these are the strongest late running backs we've had right now.
Ever.
And I'm not saying round 18, but I think rounds 15 to 17. I'm good with Ty Chandler here. I would also have been good with Leonard Fournette for hidden stack option. Give me one.
I'm good either way. Yeah.
All right. Let's.
I would tend to be Ty.
Much Lenny, so.
Yeah. I mean, I think Ty Chandler's a really nice 17th round running back, right? Like that's a profile. Like they just cut Dalvin Cook. Like he's probably their backup in an offense we were just talking about earlier. Is going to be fast paced, bad defense, going to play in a lot of like up tempo situations. Chandler has a good receiving role. It might be all Madison, but like if it's not because they're playing so fast paced, and we've never seen Madison, by the way, carry the load over multiple weeks at the NFL level. He's been a spot starter and done well. But if you go look at his game log, Dalvin Cook hasn't had a lot of stretches where he's missed multiple games. And Alexander Madison has had, the thing that I know to be true here is that he hasn't had multiple ceiling games in a row. He's had some other, he maybe had some stretches where he had multiple starts in a row. I can't remember that directly, but it's still a jury's out on how well Madison's going to carry the workload for 17 weeks. I think that's tough for any running back, but that's something we don't know to be certainly true for Madison. Chandler's in the 17th round right here with a 3-down profile and the potential to be the guy that benefits if that isn't the case. So that's a bet you should make.
And how can you fade Crack Rock and his sources?
Crack Rock sources. The Crack Rock sources. Don't bet it all on Madison. They're going full committee. I mean, Ty Chandler standalone value. It's right there. I mean, the dynamite gif and everything.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I mean, Silva absolutely loved Ty Chandler. He was very early on him. And then there's actually been some reports coming out that like, hey, Ty Chandler is going to, I think they were asked like, hey, what do you expect of him? And it's like, yeah, Ty Chandler is going to need to step up. And that's just that expectation for me is one, they're not interested in bringing in a veteran presence to this backfield, which I think that'd probably be the greatest risk for Ty Chandler. I think if it is the core that we have right now that are going in there, sure, Dwayne McBride, like great runner, may have some ability to work in, but like I think this is where the veteran of Ty Chandler has, without a doubt, like, hey, first right of refusal, like first opportunity there. And yeah, we just really don't know if Alexander Madison can handle an entire year. I'm on team there. For the Leonard Fournette one that we were talking about, for me, it's just, I think of the Zeke, Kareem Hunt, Leonard Fournette, not including Dalvin. I just think he's the one who probably has the most interest from actual coaches. He's the coach's player. We know he's great at pass blocking. We know he can play like a 3-down grinder role. And and he's actually shown interest from his comments that he still wants to play. So those combined tell me that like he's going to find a home. And there's, that'll probably should bring him up to that kind of 14th round, 13th round, worst case when he signs. Best case, where would you?
It's a smash spot.
If Joe Mixon gets cut and they sign Leonard Fournette,
that's it.
Yeah. Where would you draft him?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, is that the best case? I was just going to say, I mean, that's the easy answer. There's still the potential that Mixon gets cut. And if he gets cut, I think Fournette's the most logical answer there.
Dalvin?
Where would I draft him? I mean, it would be tricky. I mean, they might bring in multiple backs, but if they just brought in Fournette and we just immediately sort of replaced Mixon with Fournette in that offense, I mean, you'd have to take him in single-digit rounds. And for me, it becomes tricky with the receivers you're talking about going in those ranges, but he'd probably be a dead zone back. Yeah, you're like right where you're circling, 5th, 7th round, somewhere in there.
Yeah, right around these guys. I do want to give a quick check-in to who was it? Okay, it was GDE who went with the 0 RB. Okay, we can look, but I was going to say word grab here. Word grab ending with 5 straight running backs. That's going to be an interesting team. Let us make sure we finish with what we want here.
So, yeah, I like Pierre. I like Clyde. I like Dwayne McBride. Pierre just went off. I think Clyde adds to our Chase bring back.
Yeah, I know Freshka is in here listening. Hopefully Freshka doesn't go with the snipe, but I think CEH makes the most sense with us to get a little more. He also has it. So if you did take him, no harm, no foul. It fits his stacks too.
Which then for me would be well, no, we already took Chandler. We already made that bet. Then it would be Patterson. We talked about Patterson, and we have Pitts. We made a little bet on Atlanta already.
All right. Freshka goes Cedric Tillman. I think CEH makes a lot of sense here. Lock it in?
I think I would go Patterson, but I'm very comfortable going CH. What do you think about the idea that Patterson can run more receiver routes? It's a 5 running back build. I think Patterson has the better path to actually getting usable weeks through pass routes.
I'm fine with it. I think I would have
you would have went CH.
Yeah, I haven't been drafting that much Patterson for the first time this year. What is the upside scenario? Like for me with CEH, he could actually be the running back there due to injuries or whatever, and like he's actually projected for what 16 points a game. Like if he's the core running back, is it an efficiency play for Patterson? Is it he becomes the number 2 wide receiver instead of Matt Collins because they use him like they did 2-3 years ago?
Right. It's a little bit of those things for sure. It's an efficiency play. It's a Matt Collins as your wide receiver too. If you look at 2021, he caught 52 passes. I'm pretty sure he had a higher ADOT as well. Last year, he only catches 21 passes, similar rush attempts both years. Arthur Smith already has a quote this offseason where he said, like, we're excited to get back to using him more like we did in 2021. We weren't able to do that as much in 2022. And that was sort of why he was a big hit in 2021 was like they saw him as one of their top 3 or 4 playmakers in their offense. They saw him as like sort of a weapon, but like one of the weapons that actually makes sense. It's hard to talk about from a projection standpoint or the way that we typically talk about fantasy football, but it's like, look, they're going to find ways to get the ball in his hands and he is an efficiency play, et cetera. I'm a little concerned about him being over 30, a little bit more, nicked up the last couple of years. But yeah, his ADOT was, twice as high in 2021 as 2022, got way more targets, was running downfield routes more. He was split out wide 31% that year, in the slot 18%. Last year it was only 18% out wide, 15% in the slot. Quite a bit less wide receiver alignment last year. I'm expecting it to be closer to that. Basically with about 50% of his snaps, he was, or maybe not his snaps, but his pass snaps or something. I'm looking at PFS numbers here.
Yeah,
were either in the slot or out wide in 2021. I'm expecting it to be closer to that type of a number. And then, you might get the efficiency, the downfield, the big play, et cetera.
And from a pure efficiency, 3 years ago, he's still maybe like the best kick returner, punt returner in the game. So like we know he can obviously in space, like make people miss. But again, that success is when he was 30 years old, which feels old, but he was a young 30 because he didn't have the ground and pound of other running backs. But he's 32, and that's where I just feel like it's hard for me to imagine that upside scenario. Maybe he does actually have weekly spike week upside just because the player he is. But for CEH, that's the one that I could see actually like literally come playoff time, be the starting running back and be our.
So the reason I was thinking, and you're definitely convincing me of probably CH made more sense, but because this was a 5 running back build where our 4th was a 17th round pick, just the profile I'm describing for Patterson is, potentially usable weeks, potentially like a valuable RB3. If say like Gibson were to get hurt or something, we still, or miss some time to come back or whatever, we still have a guy who can put up usable weeks in the mix. Whereas I think part of the downside for CH is it is possible that he's like a game day inactive. He gets a little bit of the Ronald Jones treatment. I'm with you that he has way more take the whole job and run with it type of ceiling. Because in Atlanta, even if there's one injury, it's going to be the other guy. If Bijan were to go down, it's going to be Algier probably as the main one.
The running back. Yeah.
CEH probably jumps right in if Pacheco goes down.
I like that. And one thing, and we'll run, so we'll end with this. But when I have a 0 RB build, I want more CEH types because I don't have actually access or likelihood of hitting that upside. So I want more dart throws that give me that regular consistency, season-long upside like a CEH. When I've invested 2 top running backs, I'm expecting they're going to do well. I'm now just looking for that third one. And I'm already expecting to get, 10 points out of Gibson each game if things aren't great. So now me getting playing for that OCH that has the huge season, it's not as valuable because he's only really fitting my flex spot because I'm assuming my 2 running backs did really well. Cordell Patterson may just give me those usable weeks and those spikes that CH provides a 0. So I do like that. That makes sense.
Big bet on Pitts and on Atlanta's pass volume rising as well as it's kind of the tipping point.
Yeah. Oh, this was fun. Well, Overall, not too bad. I kind of I think we made it work despite not drafting a QB, and then it was Aaron Rodgers in the 11th. But I think it kind of fit. But I know you said you're doing some traveling. Hopefully, you're going to be able to go over the border and keep drafting some underdogs. But in the meantime, obviously, I think you still got a couple more divisions to go on Establish the Edge with Leone, stealing signals, Twitter. What do you got going on? Where can people find you?
Yeah, ship chasing, stealing bananas, stealing signals is the newsletter, bengretch.substack.com, which is sort of the primary place to find me. I'm going to be I was actually this morning working on an off-season stealing signals post, going team by team, writing up all the things that I think are signal and noise from their, from the off-season and from my projections process for each team, which is also, a good description of what Leone and I have been doing as we review our projections process over at Establish the Edge. And as you mentioned, 2 more to go. We're going to finish up recording those, I think, later this week. There are 6 out there if you go to the Establish the Edge podcast feed. Lot of really in-depth nerd talk. I think Silva tweeted out
really good
that it was perfect road trip fuel, which I think is the best way to describe it.
I've been doing a decent amount of back from South Florida and back to here, Tampa, St. Pete. And the wife actually occasionally is like, if you want to listen to one of your fantasy football podcasts, you can. And that lasts like 5 minutes.
Man, that's like me with I got 2 little girls, and it's like, yeah, we'll listen to Dad's music, and then we don't get through a half a song.
All right, well,
the podcasts are not even a choice with them. Like, I got to put on headphones to
and I'm a 2Xer, so like it just doesn't work there.
It doesn't work.
Chat, you were great. Everyone who was drafting with us and had a lot of familiar names, thank you for joining us. We will be back next week. No show next Monday. I'll be flying back from Vegas, spending the weekend out there. If anyone else is out there for Summer League or WSOP, shoot me a DM. I think we'll be doing some meetups and such. But otherwise, we will see everyone next week. And have a great weekend. Later.